All right, Scott. Hey, thanks for joining me on the podcast. Fun to get you on and talk some goaltending and all that fun stuff. Right
Absolutely.
as we're recording right before the new year, so
Yeah.
it's that nice fun part of the year where it's like, okay, what day is it? Is it the weekend? Is it what is it?
Yeah, for sure.
My wife and I were just saying that this morning. We're like, what day is it even? We know it's the day before New Year's Eve, but is it Friday? Is it Saturday? What day is it?
Yeah, it's always just pure chaos right around Christmas and afterwards.
Yeah, I always take that time off of work because even if you do into work at that time, there's still nobody there, and it's like same feeling. It's like,
Yep.
which way's up?
Yeah,
the, the
absolutely.
the best part of this time of year, though, is all the hockey that gets played, and you have the
Yep.
World Juniors and all of that, and so I appreciate that part of this year.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, it's
remember.
there's always something going on.
Yeah, and I remember as a kid, we always had the Christmas tournaments, and it was just like, yeah, you couldn't wait for it. It was just
Yep.
everybody trying out the new stuff they got for Christmas, and yeah, it was a fun time of year as a kid, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
So I'm going to start off asking the question I ask everybody: how did you get started with the game of hockey? You're out in Colorado, if I'm not mistaken, growing
Yep.
up. So hockey is you know it's got a foothold there. So, but
Yeah.
how did you get exposed to it and get turned on to it?
Um, let's see. I was like everybody else. I started off playing pretty much every single sport. I started playing roller hockey when I was probably seven or eight, right around there. And by that time, I was kind of narrowed it down to just roller hockey and football. And I've been playing both of those until I was about 10, 11. And then I got the nice little talk where he's like, all right, you got to pick one because you can't do both.
Yep.
So then I chose to specialize with hockey. Um, and transitioned over to ice hockey when I was 12. Started off as a second year Pee Wee, so a little bit behind um, most other people, but
Yep.
caught up and worked
What
through
made
it.
you want to make that transition from roller to ice?
Um, I really don't know. I played roller for a while. It was a lot of fun. Did a lot of big tournaments. And I loved it, and I just wanted to keep progressing, and I felt like my progression was kind of being going a little slower than I would
Hmm.
hope at that age. Um, and so naturally in my head, it was just kind of apparent to make the switch over to ice.
Yeah, yeah. We just moved down to Georgia, and uh, my son, he is a baseball player. That's his sport, but he's always kind of
Hmm.
had this desire to play hockey. But living in Minnesota, they didn't have house league hockey, and that's kind of what he wanted to play. He wanted to
Yeah,
play, but he didn't want to play travel.
yeah,
And as he said, he didn't like hockey parents.
that's
So,
fair.
but now that
That's
we're down
fair.
here, there's a little more roller hockey. So, it's like, well, maybe we'll check that out for you. I mean, he's in high
Yep.
school now, but it's like down here, I think he'd be all right
Yeah.
starting now, just because of all the pond hockey he played. I mean, at one point we even had our own backyard rink. So even though he didn't
Oh, that's
play,
awesome.
he might be a little further ahead than other kids down here,
Yeah.
regardless.
Yeah. No,
So
roller hockey's a blast. I wish it was still as big as it was when I was younger and playing.
yeah,
Um, just to do some skate out, do some men's league roller hockey and whatnot, but
yeah,
that's unfortunately not a thing as it was.
I remember as a kid. Now I grew up a little bit before you did, and Wayne's World had just come out, so the
Yep.
whole game off, game on. But I mean, in the neighborhood I grew up in Chicago, you could go a half mile and find two or three different games being played in the street.
Hmm.
Um, I was a fifth grader, and there were all these high school kids I would play block and a half away, and if I came walking down the street with my plastic leg pads over my shoulder, they're like, "Come on," yeah,
Yeah.
we want a goalie. They would have somebody playing goalie just because they needed one. But when somebody came that wanted to, they're like, absolutely, we don't care that you're younger than us, you know.
Yeah.
And then when I got to high school, it was every day after school. If we didn't have practice or a game, me and my teammates met. There was this nice little grade school. I had this fantastic paved, playground with blacktop, nice and smooth. It didn't have, the drainage, humps that would get in the way. It was just nice and flat. And we would meet there and we would play until dark. Every single day. Now, our coach would get upset. He's like, you guys have been playing too much of that roller hockey. I can tell because you're not doing your stops and starts. You're just doing these giant circles. It's like, yeah, I see why you're mad, coach. But you can't do stops and starts and roller like you can in hockey. But it was just tougher. He would just like go on a rant. He's like, you guys have been playing too much roller hockey, or like, is that a problem? He's like, no, he's like, the passes are better and this and that. But it was funny in that there was that difference between the two. They're close, but there's still those minute little pieces that will get you. So what drew you between the pipes? What made you want to be a goalie? Because especially starting out in roller hockey, I think roller hockey goalie is so much harder because of the footwork.
Yeah. So I was playing. I don't think I started playing goalie till I was 9 or 10. Is just like every other team at that age is just you have the pads in a bag that like every little organization has. Everybody got to play if they wanted to, and it eventually came to me, and they're like, "So do you want to play goalie?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely. I want to try it," and did it once, and just never looked back. I absolutely fell in love with it. It was obviously, like you said, a very big learning curve going from skating out to playing goalie, because the saying my dad and I always had was, if you drop in roller, you're dead. So you better be pretty darn sure you're dropping at the right time and all that good stuff. Which playing goalie and roller as long as I did, I think was actually a super big help for me transitioning into ice. Just because it added more of that patience to my game.
Well, not only the patience, but I would think the positioning and reading plays. Everything I've done with roller and talking to other goalies that have played roller hockey is you have to really read the plays much closer than when you're playing on ice. When you're playing on it, you're just following the puck. But, if you can anticipate a play, I don't want to say you can cheat, but you can save yourself some movements. We'll put it that way. That is until you get to the beer leagues, and any anticipation you have is just thrown out the window. That's a whole different discussion. So there's that part of it. And I say that because having played, through the college levels, and then you go to beer league, and it's like you get used to certain things happening in certain situations. Then you get to the beer leagues, and they may not have that skill. They never had it, or they don't have it anymore, or they don't have that knowledge, that instinct. And so, if guys are coming down on a 2-on-1, they're either going to shoot or they're going to pass and shoot,
or just miss the net by 30 feet. You never know.
Yeah, well, there's that too. But so, you'll come down and they'll pass it over. So you'll go over to make the save. Well, now they fumble the pass, so they send it back over. Now you're just completely out of position. And it makes it look like you're a complete sieve because you gave them a wide open net. It was like, no. I was playing the situation the way I learned over years. And so that's where I think if you're a roller hockey goalie younger, and then you go through and then wind up in the beer leagues, that'll help you too. Just that patience. Because you go to goalie clinics, they always say let the shooter make the first move, and that's true. But there more and more stuff I'm seeing of the studies of the true reaction time a goalie has to stop the puck, and in certain situations, there's no reaction time. It's just you're reading the situation and
Yeah.
reacting to that than you are the puck. And so if you're doing that, you're just you're kind of a sitting duck out there all by yourself.
Yep.
Um, so you're playing in Colorado. They have a pretty good hockey community out there. Things are pretty competitive. You're playing youth hockey. Were you playing travel? Was it house? What was the
Um,
landscape out there?
I played pretty much everything in the world of travel. I started off second year Pee Wee, obviously at the lowest level
Yep.
of Pee Wee B. Then next year went to Bantam A, and then for my second year Bantam, I played up a level, played midget minor, double A, and then because of some family reasons, I had to go back to midget A. And then for my last year of U16, is when I started playing out east, playing AAA, and that became its own journey.
Yeah, AAA hockey. I grew up in Chicago, so we had travel hockey. We had
Mhm.
house league hockey, which I've heard somebody explain house league hockey in Chicago as travel house because each association would have 3 or 4 teams for each level.
Yeah.
And so I played for St. Jude, and our house league, we would play St. Jude, Oak Lawn, Homewood Flossmoor, and the Chicago Hawks. So it was
Mhm.
4 associations. So you'd play out of like 5 or 6 rinks in the area, but that was it.
Yeah.
You weren't going to the other side of the city. Um, so there was that, but then you had travel hockey where it was, and then each level would have one, maybe two travel teams for each level.
Mhm.
It's not like today where, you got the C5 team
Yep.
going around. It was one, maybe two, if there was just a giant pool of kids in that age group. And they would play all over the city. They would do a
Yep.
couple tournaments throughout the year. I mean, in house league, we would have our Thanksgiving tournament, our Christmas tournament, and our Easter tournament. But they were all right there.
Yeah.
It was one year we did go down to Peoria, Illinois, and that was just because the coach talked to the parents. He's like, "Hey, there's a tournament." He's like, "Honestly, we won't do well there because it was a travel tournament. It was an A travel tournament." And they're like,
Uh-huh.
but it's dirt cheap because they're trying to fill the last spot. So we went down there. It was a great time. We held our own. I mean, did we win the game? No, but we held our own and played well.
Yeah.
Um,
That's all you can ask for.
but that was the only out of town tournament in youth hockey for me, and
Yeah.
it was fun. But and then there were a few AAA teams, Team Illinois, Chicago Young Americans, teams most people have heard of,
Mhm.
and those were the kids that it was like you saw them walking into the rink with their jackets on. It's like, ooh, they're good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was like you didn't really understand. It's like, why are they going to? And still, then it was just like they were going to Michigan and Wisconsin was really all they were playing. They might go up
Yeah.
to Minnesota for a tournament. That was that, but it's not like today where kids are going all over the country. And even down here in Georgia, that they got the Mad Hatters as a AAA team, and they're playing all over the Southeast region. They're going to
Yep.
Nashville one weekend. They're going to Alabama and Florida and all over. It's like, don't these parents have jobs?
Yeah.
Like they're taking their kid, they're spending more time taking their kids places than they are going into work, it feels
Yeah.
like.
And that was what you're saying is a big reason why I didn't play AAA here in Colorado was just the overall expense of it all because
Yep.
in Colorado we have 3 AAA teams, so essentially your schedule was you're flying out either Thursday night or sometime Thursday, and
Yeah.
then you go play different teams in like California, Michigan, like you're flying every weekend.
Yep.
And
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, even when I played, I could have played travel hockey probably. I could have made one of the teams, but mom and dad both work. So the
yeah,
conversation was always, you know, you're playing house league because we know we can get you to the games if you're playing house league.
yeah,
Travel, at that time, travel was more of the time commitment than it was the hotels and everything else. Not like
hmm
today, but it was the time commitment. It's like, we know we can get you to the games if you're playing house league. And, I played house league, and then I went on and I played high school. And, so it's not that you have, my feelings always been, it's not that you have to play travel sports in general. Talent's always going to rise.
Yeah.
It's what works best for the family. So you're playing. It sounds like you played, I'll call it association hockey, because it doesn't sound like you played high school hockey, as you're kind of navigating this whole thing.
Yeah.
And I know in Colorado that there is some high school hockey, but it's not like other states. There's nothing like Minnesota. In fact, I saw a picture out of, I think it was Wayzata, and I forget who they were playing. Sold out rink for that game. There were probably 5,000 people there for just a early season, regular season hockey game. In fact, before we moved down this summer, and my kids' high school won the single A state championship last year. We were at the XL Energy Center. It's just, they'll sell out an 18,000 seat arena for high school hockey. And it's amazing. Yep. But Michigan, it's not quite on the same level, but they're a state high school hockey. Even I won't say Illinois, but the Chicagoland area has some really good high school hockey.
Yeah, Massachusetts is very similar.
Parts of New York, I understand, have pretty good, but Colorado, they have it, but it's really centrally located, if I'm not mistaken. There's not as many teams. It's kind of like you get, there's probably some pretty good rivalries because of it too.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, high school hockey here is a lot different. So we have 2 seasons. You have a fall season and a spring season. And the spring season is where most people get excited, because that's where AAA players are able to come play in. And at the end of the day, the state championships is usually it's pretty much a lock for 4 schools every year. And but yeah, you never know what you're gonna get matched up with there. Like I played once, and I couldn't do it. Like it just messed with my head, because coming from playing out east, where we're playing, some of the best players in the country, and a bunch of D1 commits and all that. And then coming out here, and, one team, you've got 2 guys who can skate, and the rest of the guys are struggling just to get goal line to goal line.
Yeah.
And I played a couple games, and I was like, I can't.
It's harder to play down. It really is.
Yeah.
I don't think forwards truly understand or appreciate goaltenders that play down levels and play it well, because it's so much harder. Because, to my point earlier, we expect things to happen. And when we play up, those things still happen. They just happen quicker.
Right.
But when you play down, those things don't happen, and they happen slower. So it's almost like the mess up is happening in slow motion. And you're like, I know what I'm doing wrong, but I just can't reach it because of how slow. I totally hear what you're saying there. It's a fun little deal. In fact, I was going to the rink for one of my beer league games, and they were high school age kids. I don't know if it was a high school game or not, but I'm watching this game. There were 2 kids on the ice that could skate. And I'm like, this is the goalie out for the one team never got up. If the puck crossed the red line, they were already down in the RVH. And I'm like, how are you guys not just shooting it high? First of all. But it was like, hey, they're out here, they're having fun, good for them. But it's funny, when we got down here, my daughter's like, it's so weird to me that my school doesn't have a hockey team. I'm like, technically they do. It's a co-op of all the high schools in the county. There's one team. She's like, but we have an equestrian team. Like, what's going on here? It's a different part of the country, but and then she's like, how do we not have a hockey team? It's like, you need to put it in perspective. Where we live, there are 7 sheets of ice for hockey. where we moved from, one rink had 8 sheets of ice, and there were 2 more sheets like a mile and a half down the road, and there were
Yep.
just sheets every. I said, so it's not that there's not hockey here; it's just there's not as much opportunity for it. She's like, oh, I suppose that makes sense.
Yeah. It's a little bit more confined.
Yeah, so looking at your Facebook page and stuff, and for those wondering, as I getting the podcast back up and running after my break, I went to the GGSU page and just started going through some profiles, finding ones I'm like, I think I might want to talk to them, and it came across yours, and so you playing youth and travel, and even before we get into the college side of things, it looked like you almost went to Embry-Riddle for college. What were you looking at going there for?
There was a lot of schools that I almost went to. I applied, so I knew I knew I was going to take at least one gap year from
Yeah.
high school to college. So my senior year, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna apply to like 2 or 3 schools, and then we're just gonna see what
See what
happens. Like,
happens.
yeah, just you never know. So most of the schools, I mean, I got accepted to all the schools I applied to, um, and Embry-Riddle was for aerospace engineering.
Yep.
Got into Clarkson for aerospace as well. But most of them were either mechanical engineering or aerospace.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because my son is looking to go into aerospace engineering, and we've checked out Embry-Riddle, but that's one of the reasons we're in Georgia. He wants to go to Tech.
Yeah.
We visited that campus, but you didn't go there.
Nope.
You wound up looked like in Michigan at what was it, Trine University. What brought you there, and what was the major there?
So it's actually like the very north part of Indiana. Like it's like
Okay.
the most northeast part of Indiana. We were like 10 minutes from Ohio and 15 from Michigan.
Yeah.
Um, so that was probably the first school that had been recruiting me from. I think I've been talking to them since my first year out east. But I was always super interested with them because that school's got a phenomenal engineering program and is
Hmm.
I visited there several times. Really liked the campus, kind of in the middle of nowhere, which is not a huge deal. It's on the smaller side. Everybody I met was super nice, super helpful. Um, but the plan, I mean, just like everybody else, I was looking at the NCAA route.
Yeah.
And then the more I talked, because I talked to a couple D1 schools and a couple D3 schools, and they all kind of told me the same thing. It's like, if we recruit you, we have a hard time with it because you're interested in that engineering field, and it's a big time commitment to try to balance out NCAA hockey and an engineering degree. It is like it's possible, but you're going to be busy pretty much all day, every day.
And that kind of bugs me because there's kids that go pre-law, there's kids that go pre-med. It's the
Hmm.
same time commitment.
Yeah.
And if you're getting accepted into the program, you're a smart kid and you can handle it, especially engineering. All the
Yeah.
engineers I know are somewhat type A in that it's like very regimented. It's like, this is what I got to do
Yep.
now. And this, so it's like that kind of bugs me a little bit, but it's a cop out for coaches, I think, at times too, to be
Yeah.
like, well, yeah.
I don't disagree. Yeah, so I went to Trine. Went there for 2 years. I was in engineering for 1 year. I couldn't do chemistry. It's fine with everything else. Couldn't do chemistry.
Yeah.
Ended up switching to accounting, and I'm still doing that.
Okay.
So college has also been a whole experience as well.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a fun, interesting time in one's life.
yeah,
But it's interesting you went from engineering to accounting because I mean, yeah, there's some overlap, but they are very different.
Yes.
Um, uh, you know, areas of study for sure.
Yeah.
Even just the personalities of the people in those programs are
Yeah.
very different. Um,
100%.
I've worked with engineers, and engineers, they, I don't want to say they don't have a sense of humor. It's just a very dry sense of humor that most people don't pick on. But the
Yep.
accountants I know, don't take this the wrong way, but most accountants I know don't even have a sense of humor, or if they
It's
do, it's like that scene from Parks and Rec,
yeah.
where it's like it's so bad. It's like, oh my god, they make dad jokes look
Yep.
like a great comedian.
I think it just gets slowly drained from you the longer you're accountant. Like it
Yeah.
just runs from you.
So, what interested you about accounting,
Um,
other than there
I
was no chemistry?
I honestly have no clue. Um, I'm I'm definitely more interested in like the finance side of things.
Hmm.
Um, but at the time it was like, okay, well, mechanical engineering is not going to work, so I need to find something else. And I was
Yep.
like, you know what? Accounting, that's something I already understand. It's all numbers. I'm good with numbers. Let's do that. But
Yeah,
now
you
here I
probably
am.
had some of the classes already done because, like
Yep.
you said, the overlap.
Yep.
Um, yeah, that's what we're learning right now. Is like my son's in some of the advanced classes, and they're like, if you can take the post secondary and get your, calculus and some of that stuff out of the way, do it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
might as well, get.
Yeah.
And he likes it, so it's like, thank God he's good at it because there's no way in heck I could help him with it. I was, even though I'm an analyst these days, like math is not my jam. Like I
Hmm.
can come up with a mean Excel formula to do the math for me, but don't ask me to do it myself.
Yeah. Yep.
So you're going to school there, and they had an ACHA team, and you're
Yep.
playing there. How did that go for you? And tell me a little bit about
Um,
that.
so I really enjoyed my time there. Um, so I started there on the D3 team, and while doing that, I was also probably spreading myself too thin, but I loved the ice time, so I did it. I was skating with my team at 6 in the morning, uh, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then I skated with our D2 team Monday through Thursday, and they practiced at night, so between 9 and 11 start times. And
Hmm.
then when I was able to, I'd also skate with our NCAA women's team because they were short goalies, and they practiced from either 12 or 1. So pretty much if I was out of class, I was on the ice.
Yeah, no,
Um,
when I was in college, I was kind of in a slump, just wasn't seeing the puck well, and one of our women's goalies got hurt, and the coach is like, "Hey, can you come out for our practice today? Like, we need a goalie." I was like,
mhm,
"Okay, yeah." And some of my teammates were picking on me, like, "Oh, you're skating with the women's team," but well, and that was one of the best skates for me because as we talked earlier, like you play down a level, things don't happen the way you're supposed to. Well, with the
mhm,
women's game, it's not that it's slower. It's slightly slower than the men's game in that the shots aren't as fast or
right.
as hard, but everything was happening as it was supposed to, but just at that slightly slower pace where it was like, man, like I think the only pucks that went by me that day were from the coach.
Yeah,
There may have been one or two, but it was like, man. And then right after was our practice. So I mean, I just got off the ice for the Zamboni, got right back on. And like after that, it was just like boom, right there. My timing was back again. And it's
yeah,
like I wish I skated with them I think two other times because somebody was hurt. And it was like, man, it helped my game so much just to have
yeah.
that.
It's great. Like if there's one thing I tell a lot of my buddies that go to school with that have a girls team, and if they're in a slump or whatever, it's
Yeah.
exactly that. Is like if you're able to, try to get some ice time with the women's, because like their shots may not be as fast, but they're they're a lot more accurate than most people give them credit for.
They're more accurate, and their stick handling is so
Yeah,
much better.
yeah.
I remember this was back in, it was after the Nagano Olympics. I was skating rat hockey in Chicago downtown, and one of the women's Olympic players was out there.
Mhm.
And if she was taking a shot from beyond the hash marks, like it was nothing for me. But she was just stick hand. It looked like Patrick Kane in that one video going through all the pucks. She
Yeah,
was stick handling through everybody just like that. And it was like, man, just, sticking with her for that. Like she was going to score on me because she was going to catch me out of position just because of her hands, not because of
yeah.
her shot. It was incredible what she was doing with the puck back then.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I'm 100% with you. It's um, skating with some of those high end women's teams is one of the best things you can do for your game.
Absolutely.
And like I said, I'm not saying this is a knock against them. It's pure physiology.
Yeah,
Guys are bigger, so longer limbs, you skate faster. Um,
yeah,
and the just that micro nanosecond slower helps. It's like it. I'm not a car guy, but I know there's something with like the timing belt where if you can just like slow it down enough to get it to like click in or something,
yeah,
that everything works. It's almost like the same thing. It's like slowing down the timing belt, so everything
yeah,
just starts clicking again. Skating with a team like that it was great.
yeah.
It's almost like if you're playing for a varsity team, going down and skating with the JV team.
Mhm.
Um, but I was on the JV team, so I couldn't go down. It's not like that. Yeah. In fact, when I was in college, ACHA was around, but that was back in the day when ACHA was viewed as club hockey, and some of these teams you had kids who could barely skate.
Yeah.
It's not like today where I'm 100% on board with John Butchergrass, where club hockey is college hockey now.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, back then, so would I have wound up where I wound up if club hockey was what it is today? I honestly don't know. I'm glad I did. Things have worked out great, but it was like, would I have opened up my eyes to other schools? Maybe.
Right.
There is that. In fact, now that we're down here, I got on the ice with Georgia Tech because they have a ACH. Well,
Yep.
they're not in the ACHA. I forget what they're
Oh,
part of.
they're AAU, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
And it was their prospect camp. So, some of the kids weren't quite in college yet, but they needed a goalie. And it was funny because I pulled out the poke check and stacked the pads. And one of the other goalies was like, how do you do that? I'm like, what do you? And then he saw my skates that had, I got a pair of older goalie skates that still have the cowling on them. And they're
Yeah.
like, how old are those skates? And it was like, they're older than you. Shut up.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
I could have grabbed fear about it and telling them that, one of the kids asked me, like, well, what's your style like? And it's like, well, it's kind of a mix between Hasek and Cujo. And both goalies are sitting there. They're like, who are they?
Oh,
And I
that's
was like,
unbelievable.
I was like, shut up. Leave the locker room now. Like
Yeah.
the one kid's like, well, I think I've heard of Hasek, but who's Cujo? It's like, seriously, Curtis Joseph? No, I've never heard.
Got to put them in timeout after that.
It's like these
That's
guys didn't
insane.
play that long. It's not like I'm talking about Turk Broder or Ken Dryden.
Right.
I'm talking about guys that your mom and dad could have watched on TV.
Right.
Um,
And if
but
you go
it's
to
like
like any
any YouTube.
highlight video,
Yeah.
like if you looked up the top saves like in NHL history, those guys are in there at least 10 times each.
Yeah, Hasek is in arguably the top three, if absolutely the top five, arguably the top three goaltenders
Yeah.
of all time. Cujo is
100%.
just on the outside. It's like, what do you mean you've never heard of these guys?
Yeah. That's insane.
So you're going to school at Trine, you're there 2 years, and then you decide to transfer. What went into that decision?
So I planned on transferring my freshman year, but then the D2 coach and my dad kind of convinced me to stay for that sophomore year.
Yep.
Sorry, I got pulled up to the D2 team after a little run at nationals the year before. The hockey was good. The school was good. It just it wasn't it wasn't a great fit for me that I was no longer an engineer because their trine was more focused of an engineering school.
Hmm.
Um, so for me, it was like I just the money wise, like it wasn't the right fit for me at the end of the day that I was no longer an engineer.
Yeah.
Um, so I ended up transferring at the end of that year. Planned on going to University of Northern Colorado. You know, enjoy being home for the first time in 6 years for longer than 3 months. But so got committed there, got registered for classes. Everything was good. I was all set to play there this year. And then I get a text about a week before school starts. It's like, hey, we want to let you know that the team's under investigation for hazing and a bunch of other stuff. So I hear that. I'm like, oh, great. I got to find a new school.
Yeah.
So um, I instantly jumped on all of my recruiting information and started reaching out to everybody. I'm like, hey, who needs a goalie? Where
Hmm.
I can get into the school, like just help me out, find a spot. And I ended up going to a school called Cleary University, and that's in Howell, Michigan, like 45 minutes from Detroit. Um, that was D1, and loved the team, loved the hockey. It was a lot of fun, but the school was not a great fit for me again. So now I'm headed over to Eastern Washington to finish out school.
And you say you're heading to Eastern Washington. That's after this school year, correct? Or did you transfer at
No,
the
I'm
semester?
transferred at semester.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. So hey, you're doing what's right for you, which I think is hard for a lot of kids. Where you get a place and you're like, well, let me just finish it out here. It's only four
yeah,
years, but like you said, you left trying because you're going to school for accounting,
yep,
and they're more engineering posts. Doesn't mean they didn't have an accounting program, but it's not the right one for you.
right.
And that's it's sometimes it's hard to find the right one. So when you wind up in Washington, do they have a hockey program too, or is it going
Yep.
to be straight academics for you at that
Nope.
point?
They have a D2 team.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
It seems like every small school these days has that ace. As long as there's kids that can fill out the roster and they can do the fundraising, it's like, why wouldn't they have a team?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Have a rink nearby and get the guys going.
Right.
Um, so then the question comes, you're what, probably with the transfers and stuff, you're going to be going into your junior year.
Yep.
The plans after college, are you looking at becoming an accountant, a financial advisor? What are you looking to do
Um,
with that degree?
I've got a couple things I'm interested in. So I'm double majoring in finance and accounting,
Okay.
and then plan on getting my master's after after that. Um, so number one on my list is IRS criminal investigation.
Okay, that's fun.
Yep. And then um, I'm also really interested in like the financial analyst, financial advising,
Hmm.
stuff like that. Um,
I was gonna say you could always go the analytics route like myself,
yeah.
and there's a whole broad expanding world with analytics.
Mhm.
Um, even just looking at pro sports and the analytics departments they put together. It's funny because I don't want to say I'm like on the early end of the bell curve for analytics, but for marketing analytics, I kind of am. We're back when you know the early 2000s. It was like, hey, there's this new tool out there called Google Analytics, and
Yep.
they would either give it to one of the marketing people who was somewhat okay with computers, or they would give it to one of the accountants and be like, what do you know about this? And for people like me, it was like Pandora's box, like, oh, this is interesting. And
Yeah.
then it was like, what else can we track? And now we can track darn near everything. And it's like, how does it all come together? But yeah, that's what I do for my day job, and it bores a ton of people. But when I can show some people, it's like, yeah, well, because of this, this, and this, we were able to make this decision. In fact, when I was working at 3M, I was working on a team called the Automotive Electrification Team. It's a mouthful to say sensors, and all of the cool stuff they're doing on cars. But we were able to see what the design engineers at Mercedes were looking at on our website, and they were very difficult to get and talk to. But because we knew what they were looking at, our salesperson was able to then call them and be like, hey, would you be interested in learning about this? And they were like, well, actually, yes, we are. It's like, well, we know you are, because for whatever reason, there's only a very small handful of design engineering offices in the world. And for whatever reason, they all gave us their IP addresses. So we were able to see what each individual. So, it's like we went in, our sales guy went into that call with a very, what I was told, stubborn design engineer that, never said yes on the first try for anything. And he walked out of there with like a deal that was worth like $500 million over 10 years.
Wow.
Just because we were able to see what they were, it was just like, yeah, that's the beauty of analytics. Now, when we turn it into sports, I mean, we've seen all of the different things. I mean, they've taken the shift away from baseball because of the analytics. It was getting too boring. It's interesting that they're so analytics heavy in hockey when it's a little harder to coach against the analytics the way you could in baseball or even football. And I think as a goaltender, that's where we could get really analytics heavy of, well, this shooter likes to go here. But so many goalies I talk to, it's like, that's information overload. I just want to be like Yogi Berra, read and react. Let me practice for all of these different situations and get good at them, but don't let me get into my own head like, well, he's going to go 5-hole here, and then he rips it bar down. But there is a time and a place for the analytics. I think more so far on the broadcast TV side of things. That's where they really love it, because they have something to talk about.
Absolutely.
But part of my job is because I'm good with spreadsheets, I handle our marketing department's budget stuff. And you talk about financial investigation. A lot of that, trying to figure out, where's this money being spent? Why is it going here? Nothing nefarious, but at the same time, I've told my VP, I'm like, if I ever leave this company, I might go into financial investigations because I feel like that's what I'm doing here.
It's a good field. It's a great field.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and it's fun when you go down those rabbit holes, and it's like, what's going on here? And you keep getting deeper and deeper, and it's like, there we go. But yeah, I completely digress there. But after that, then as Kane Van Gate says, all roads lead to the beer league. So you'll get your college hockey in, and that'll be fun. I mean, I think back 20 years ago to when I was finishing up, and those were 4 of the funnest years of hockey in my life. Not saying beer league hockey isn't fun. I mean, the fact that there's a cold beer waiting for me in the locker room after the game now versus in college when we had apples and sandwiches. There are trade-offs, but just like you were saying, you were skating 2-3 times a day, almost every day of the week. For me, it was 6 days a week. The rink was 100 yards from my dorm room. I even had keys to the rink because I was one of 3 students that was allowed to drive the Zamboni. So it's like, they're the 4 best years of hockey. Maybe not skill. I can say for some, maybe not skill wise or wins loss wise, but just the parts we love about hockey. I'll say it to the day I die. When the competitive days are over, what you miss is practice in the locker room. And there's just nothing like it. But eventually you'll make your way to the beer leagues, and that'll be just as fun. Like you said, you'll have the cold beer in the locker room afterwards. And That's one thing I'm struggling with down here is it's not that there's not the cold beers. The rinks don't like that. So if you
Really?
do, yeah, they really the one league. If you have locker room beers, you get suspended for a game, and the team captain gets like a 3-game suspension or something. It's
Oh,
like,
wow.
my only guess is they had a bad situation years ago. That's the
Yeah.
only thing I can think of.
It's got
And
to be some
then
sort of backstory.
a few rinks will let you have parking lot beers, which, okay, we're down in Georgia. That's fine. It's not like I'm up in Minnesota where half the year it's, your face hurts when you leave the rink.
Right.
So it's like, okay, that's fine. But then there's 2 rinks that actually have bars in them.
Mhm.
The one, though, the bar is usually closed before the beer league games are over. And we're like, why are you open for the mite practices, but not the beer league games? Like, we're all going to come up afterwards. Now, where I'm
Right.
skating this afternoon, they've got it figured out. The bar is open until all the games are over. And part of the league fees cover a pitcher of beer for your team after each game.
Oh, really?
So that, because what that's doing is now encouraging you to go upstairs
Yeah.
and spend more money. And
Yep.
they have a cool thing too, where you can go up there before the game, pay a couple bucks, and they'll have a tub of beers in your locker room when you get out. They just have these metal tubs. They'll fill them up with ice. And they're like, well, how many guys you got on your team? Like, we got 12. They'll bring down 18 cold beers for you. It's
That's
like
awesome.
it's like they've got it figured out at that rate.
Yeah.
Because they know that'll bring you upstairs. You'll stay for, hour or so. And they have really good food too. So that helps too. And so
Yep.
usually after the game, the guys are like, who's going upstairs for beer and wings? I'm like, I'll go up for some beer. Well, some beer. I go up for one. I don't have any more after that. But it's like, I'll go up, I'll have a beer with you fellas, and then I'll head home. But the only problem is out here, the game's on average. I mean, today's game's great. It's 12:40 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
But on average, it's like 10:40 at night. And they play 3 25-minute running time period. So it's like, you're getting off the ice at darn near midnight. At that point, I want to go home and go to bed.
Yeah.
I don't want
Just
to
wanna
sleep
sleep.
up for another hour.
Yeah.
So there is that. So, I mean, and it's funny because I've skated a couple different places, and every place is different on how they handle it. So some rinks have bars in them, some don't. More rinks I've been to allow the locker room beers. In fact, when I skated at the Super Rink in Minnesota, the league director would let you know it was time to sign up your team by releasing a video on social media where he was cracking open a beer and shotgunning it in the locker room. So it's
Nice.
like, yeah, it's accepted there. That
That's awesome.
there are a few rinks in Minnesota that had the bars where they're like, we're not going to say no to the locker room beers, but like, don't make it obvious and take the empties with you because we got kids coming in here. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
you don't want them in the garbage can, fine.
Yeah.
But they had no problem with you carrying in the cooler as long as you weren't bringing in the roller cooler or anything. Just
Yeah.
But there's that. So I want to be mindful of time and the fact that I have to get to a game here today. And I end every episode with a list of 10 questions. I used to call them rapid fire questions, but they don't get asked very quickly because they bring up more stories. And the first one is, what's the craziest coaching moment from your playing days so far where a coach just loses it and goes full on Mike Keenan?
Definitely my first year. Yeah, my first year out east. It was kind of the, I guess, reality check. Made me realize where I was, and it's like, okay, this is serious hockey now. So I got to adjust to this. Actually, there was a couple from that year, and I still think he's arguably the best coach I've ever had. I still talk to him every now and then. But it was the first coach I ever had that had no issue screaming at you and all that stuff. But there was one practice we had where, for whatever reason, our guys could not catch a pass for a couple drills back to back. We were messing the drill up. We couldn't catch passes. We couldn't hit the net. And I just see my coach off to the side just absolutely fuming. I'm like, this is not going to be good. And next thing I know, guy passes the puck about 10 feet off of my teammate, and then I just hear a loud bang, and then I look over, and my coach has got one half of a stick, and then the other half is flying off, you know, the other way, and then just starts screaming at us and puts us on the goal line for probably 45 minutes. And then there was another time where we played a team that was a little bit better than us, but should have, warranted, a nice split because it was 2-game series that weekend,
Yeah.
and they were both home games. We ended up losing both games, and our coach was not happy about getting swept on home ice. So the next practice was just, for him, great. For us, it was terrible. We just skated and had had like 6 different stations around the ice where he would be like, well, here you're doing push-ups for 5 minutes or until I say stop. This side we're doing crunches. On the far end you're going boards and back, and it was not fun, but we ended up doing really well that year. I think we made it to the semifinals.
It's
Yeah.
funny on how some of those coaches that are a little crazier, we'll say, wind up being the ones we think are, some of the best coaches. I mean, look at the way some of these guys talk about John Tortorella
Yep.
and Mike Keenan. Now, Mike Babcock's a whole nother story because he's just a jerk. But Keenan and Tortorella, guys talk around, they're like, yeah, he was different, but, and he demanded a lot. But if you gave that, they had nothing but respect for you, too.
Exactly.
And
I think
and both those guys got results.
Yeah, and I think it's also good because, I mean, it's obviously a big teeter-totter when you're one of those louder, more aggressive coaches on your own team,
Yeah.
because, like, I've had a coach that was just on the angry, yelling, always something bad, and then that coach I had in Connecticut where he was, pretty balanced in it, where he would yell at you for a while, and then the next 2 days he's super helpful, super calm, and
Yep.
like acknowledges all the good things. And I feel like it's just a really big balancing act at the end of the day.
It's almost like parenting. You got to know when to lean in and when to take the foot off the pedal.
Yeah.
And you got to know who you can lean into versus who you can't, because some players just can't take it.
Yeah.
That I mean, we've all heard the stories of Herb Brooks and Mike Eruzione, and you let him know he's like, I'm gonna lean into you because I think you can take it.
Yep.
I forget who it was telling the story where the coach, he was a captain, and the coach kind of had a conversation with him about that, and he said, when I am referring to you by your number, that is me yelling at the team, but using you as the example.
Yep.
So, but when I'm yelling at you using your name, I'm yelling at you.
Yep.
It was like that was their understanding. And the guys were like, man, he was really ripping into him, and he would just kind of be chuckling like, no, he was laying into the team, sending a message, and it worked because, but it was like, oh, what a great way to have that conversation with a captain who you think is mature enough to handle that.
Yeah.
That's just good coaching. So the next question, I believe I know the answer just by looking at your Facebook photos, but what is your favorite all-time goalie mask?
Oh, Pavin's mask. That's up there.
That's one of the masks so many people like. And I got to ask, what is it about that mask that you like?
For me, one of my favorite things was, it's simplistic but creative. Because I don't know, like, you see my pads on there. I don't go super crazy with my designs. It's just 2 colors, and you have your primary and a secondary, and that's kind of it. I don't.
Yep.
Because I've seen goalies do the super crazy designs, full custom designs. That's just not me. I like
Same.
the Yeah, it's just the simple, clean cut. Everything's there.
Yeah, I call it the '90s simplicity.
Yeah,
You know,
100%.
where you can tell. I mean, you've probably seen my stuff too, where it's like I just like that simple, clean, and that was a struggle I had when I finally broke down 2 years ago and got new pads for the first time since the 1900s. Where it's like, well, all of the new graphics, like you said, are kind of like crazy and out there, and I was like,
Yeah,
well, I want something simple, and I was able to get the same old. I don't want to say old graphic, but the same graphic I had before on my Bond Legacies with a
yeah,
little extra color added to them. Like I love it just because it's simple and it's not going to be like some of these other sets where I see them. It's like 2 years later, it's like, oh, that's dated already.
yep,
I think that's what I like about some of those um, pads from the '90s. Is like there's a reason goalies are going with the retro look of those pads because
yeah,
they look so good. You know, even some of
100%.
like Brown and you know some of the other companies that were I don't want to say a little more out there, but just had a little more going on. Is still a good classic look.
Yeah,
And that is one of the things about Potvin's masks is it looks so good in just about every single color combination.
yeah.
You know
And I was,
that's been proven by how many people go with it.
yeah, and I really like my Trine helmet because I actually did a lot with that helmet, and I I still have it. I love it. I put like the Trine Circle logo on the side, and then our mascot was the Thunder, so I
Hmm.
put like little lightning bolts all over the helmet, and then I didn't like that the eyes and the teeth had just a
Yeah.
flat black background. So I asked my designer to put like a little bit of like make it look like gold flake in there
Yep.
in the wrap. So it just like I don't think you could see it unless you're 5 feet away from it. But for me, I absolutely loved it.
And I think that's probably one of the cooler things about masks today is you can have that look that from the stands you see what it is, but there's still those little things that when you get up close are still there too. I
Yeah,
don't want for a while I called it the Dave artifact, but that was more of he was throwing everything but the kitchen sink on there. But he kind of came out with some of those techniques of almost like the holographic things that when you get close or what you see
yeah,
them.
yeah,
And I like that modern take on the classic masks that you see some guys doing and girls.
absolutely.
Um, so the next question is, what's your favorite rink that you've played
Oh, jeez, that's
at? You played at a few.
yeah. Um, see, I've played at a lot of college rinks and a lot of pro rinks, but my favorite, just from a chaos standpoint, um, Adrian Col, yeah, Adrian University or Adrian College, I can't remember now, but they're in Michigan,
Yep.
and they were our rivalry school when I was at Trine, and they have ACHA D1, D2, D3, women's D1, D2, D3, NCAA D3, and
Yeah.
they
They
were
got so many programs. It's
yeah,
ridiculous.
and they're one of those schools where all of their hockey programs are phenomenal
Hmm.
and they sell out every game. There's a bar above the benches, and it's I loved playing there. It's just chaos all the time, and it's fun. I like that atmosphere.
Yep. That was when we would play at Gustavus Adolphus. That rink, the the stands are elevated. So the glass ends here and then the stands start up here and there's a
Uh
little bit
huh.
of a walkway. Well, because of that, they would have to put a spit guard over the visiting team's penalty box because if they didn't have it up there, the students were known to like throw their spit cups down at the players while they were in there,
Yeah.
throw beer, and it's like so they had to. And it was like because it would be almost game time, and then two people would come walking out with the spit guard, and they'd put it up over the visiting team's penalty box. And after the game, they would. It was just in. I mean, granted, I only played there for JV games, but they still had people showing up for those, and they still had to bring out the spit guard for JV games. And
Yep.
but I did stats for some of the varsity games there, and it's just a fun barn to play in because whether they were good or not, the rink was on campus and it's a small town, so students are turning out there, and their campus was a little bit like the one I was at St. Mary's, where it's like, all right, there's a dorm right by, and between periods, everybody file into that dorm, have a few drinks, come back to the rink, and by the third period, it was getting belligerent in a good way.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned the spit guards in the penalty box because, like I mentioned, they had the bar right above the benches. They put, it doesn't really work, but they put like extra netting above, like in front of the bar to stop people from pouring beers on the visiting team bench. It didn't work. Like when I was there last time, we had a kid on our team who had just transferred out of Adrian and apparently was not very popular at that school, as we found out. And obviously everybody knew him because it's a very small school there.
Right.
And everyone knew he left and came to the rivalry school. And I was on the bench for that game, and that kid's sitting like 5 people away from me, and then he went to talk to me. I'm like, I'm not trying to get beer poured on me. You can stay away. Like, just stay over there. Like, and then ironically, he did end up getting some drinks poured on him. So I was very happy that he was not next to me.
Yeah, that's what I liked about our barn at St. Mary's is that we were a small school. I think it was 1,500 students. So our barn wasn't very big because it didn't need to be. But when we packed it, I mean, it was a great place to play. But it was the players' benches on the one side, and then the stands and penalty box on the other side. So it's like when you were on the bench, you were insulated a little bit, and people would file all the way around to the two ends. Well, they couldn't be on the one end, which when I was there was the visiting end because that was the Zamboni entrance. But they would file behind the home team goalie, and it was just a fun Olympic sheet of ice too, and that gave us some home ice advantage because like Gustavus Adolphus, their rink was shorter than NHL rink. So then they would come to ours, and that first period, they were getting their legs, and there were a lot of errant passes because they weren't used to the big ice. But then again, when we went to Gustavus, it was like, Jesus Christ, this place is tiny. I told the story on the podcast before my first time playing there. I would always check my angles and do rinks, make sure they were all good. But with the Olympic sheet, I had to get a good push to get behind the net to stop a ring around because it was, big area to cover to get to that wall. So first ring in the first period comes, and I get my good push in there. I'm not joking, about this much room behind the net to the boards. And because I got my big push, I bounce off the boards, fall down, puck goes right by me. And luckily my D was there to get it and get out of the zone. And I look at the bench and my coach is just laughing. And we get to the locker room for a first intermission. He goes, I forgot to tell you something about this rink. And I said, well, I found out what it is.
Yeah.
But it was like after that, like anytime we would go into that rink, and when I was an upperclassman, I'd tell the younger goalies, like, hey, there's not as much room behind this net. Check it out during warm-ups and tell them what happened. But it was just so funny. I look over at the coach. He's just laughing. Forgot to tell you that one. So what is your favorite stick that you've ever used?
I've gone through a lot. I think my favorite is the sticks I still use now. It's the Bauer 3S Pro. They're everything like good in a stick for me. Like they've got a good curve because I play the puck a lot. They've got a good flex, and they're incredibly durable. Like I just broke my first one, and I've had that one since those sticks came out, probably three some odd years ago. And they're great. They're a little heavy for most people, but I like the heavier sticks.
Same.
I don't like
Because I got my foam core over there.
Yeah, I used foam core for a long time. But I remember when I was at Trine, they gave me a couple of the mock sticks, and it's all well and good. I know some people love them. I do not fall in that category. It is my least favorite stick that I've ever used. I've never had stick break that fast and that often than the Bauer mock.
Yeah,
And I know some people love it, but
I loved
way
the
too light.
Christian goalie sticks back in the day, and Eddie Balfour used them too, and he had a model out. It had his little eagle down at the bottom under the Christian logo, and I loved his curve.
Yeah.
But my school, we could get Christian sticks. It was one of had Christians, and that year I think our other option was Coho, the WA model. Again, I'm showing my age because these were guys that were still playing at the time. But the Christian sticks we would get were the Toronto pattern, which was still a good one, but it wasn't the curve I liked. So my mom and dad, they were coming up, and they got a 3-pack of the Belfour. And I was like, great. All 3 broke within a week because they were a thinner stick. And they even said, only use them for games because they're brittle. I'm like, well, that sucked. It's like, why didn't you make a beefier one like all of the other Christian sticks? I get that that's what he liked, and he had an unlimited supply, but to have 3 of them break in a week was just brutal. Because he had more of that rounded heel that I really liked, and the curve it was more of a mid curve than a toe or a heel curve, which was it was a nice little, lack of a better term, nice little banana curve. And I really liked it, but when those 3 broke in 1 week, I was like, I'm not getting these again. I don't have the funds for it, especially when back then it was like 150, almost $200 for the 3 sticks. Where at school, if I was just going with the Toronto pattern, I could get 3 for $20. I was like, it's more economical to just go with these other ones that last.
It's a tough choice there.
Yeah. In fact, I was the last one that was using the Toronto patterns when I was there. So my senior year, I went to get a couple right at the end of the season, knowing I wouldn't be able to get that deal anymore. And the coach who handled all the sticks, he's like, there's 6 of them left in the cabinet. Just take all 6 of them because nobody else is going to use them. I was like, sweet, 6 sticks for $20. This is a steal. But yeah, that was a good one. So what's your favorite youth hockey memory?
Favorite youth hockey? Probably the first. When I was playing, it was my last year of association hockey here in Colorado, and we didn't have a very skilled team, but we just had a gritty team, and everybody was just absolute worker. And it was it was the first tournament I had ever won in my lifetime. And so that was just a really cool feeling for everybody because it was most people's first tournament win, and I think it just felt that much better because we knew going into every game, we just have to work because we might not have as many skilled players as they do, whatever, but we'll 1000% be the hardest working team.
Yeah. Well, that's what's great about some of those, holiday tournaments, whatnot, is how it can maybe not turn around a season, but give a team confidence. My high school team, freshman, sophomore year in league play, we won a combined 138-1. But my freshman year, we were playing, and it sounds like we were horrible. We weren't great, but we played in the Chicago Catholic Hockey League. notoriously difficult league. But when we would play the public schools, we had a winning record. So like by the end of the year, when you looked at all of our games, we were about 500. But league play, we were absolutely terrible.
Right.
But we played in this Christmas tournament, and we just outworked everybody, like you said, and we wound up winning the tournament. It was just like, how the heck did we win that tournament? Like it didn't make sense, but it's just that time where we all came together, we worked hard, and it was like we had that glimpse of what we could be, and it gave us a little bit of confidence for a few weeks. And then, but the problem with that team, we had a lot of talent, we just didn't have a team. We didn't have players that could play as a team. We had a lot of individuals.
Yeah,
that was the frustrating thing.
I've been on those teams.
It reminds me of that early scene in Miracle. Like, I'm not looking for the best players. I'm looking for the best team. Yeah. There's so much to that. And, you know, that's actually why I actually made my college team is I had my goalie coach from college got early in the podcast. And I was like, Donnie, my freshman year, we had, I think it was like 20 some odd goalies trying out for 6 spots.
Yeah.
I was not one of the 6 best goalies. Like, what the heck were you guys thinking? He's like, sometimes it's beyond just what you can do on the ice. It's what you can do off the ice. It's like, so you're telling me I was a locker room guy. I was the person. And he's like, I'm not saying that. He's like, you did a lot for the, I was like, no, that's what I'm picking up from you. I was a locker room guy. I knew it. One of my teammates from youth hockey, who was a rival in high school and then wound up at the same college as me, but he didn't make the team. He would joke and say I had the fastest score in the league for 4 years. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I did. I got to be proud of something, right? But, you know, yeah, it's like you need people to fill certain roles in the team. And
absolutely.
They have to understand that's their role. And luckily for me, by the time I got to college, I understood that my role was a JV backup, and I was fine with it. Did I want to play? Yes. When I got the chance to play, did I do my best? Yes. But my role was backup, and I understood that. So I was a good teammate because of it. Yeah. But there's, you know, that's just one example. But when you get that forward who thinks they are the power play specialist in the first line center, and they're not put out on special teams, and they're actually playing third line minutes, then they become grumpy, and it's like, no, you know, and we had a lot of that. Luckily, our coach was studying to get his doctorate in psychology, so he found different ways for us to enjoy the season despite the record.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, I've had conversations with Paul, and it was like, yeah, he's like, I could tell early on that it was going to be a long season. He's like, so I found ways for us to have fun. I was like, well, for the most part, it worked, but winning would have been more fun.
Yeah, it's a tough feeling to beat.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I've had it in the beer leagues too, where we've had a season where, you know, I think we won 1 game, and I was like, but did we have fun that whole season? God, yeah, we had fun. So what is the best chirp you've heard on the ice, off the ice, directed at you, not directed at you?
I heard a lot of really good ones when we were at Adrian. I know I just can't think of them off the top of my head, but there's anytime I was in that barn, I don't know how, but the fans, students were always throwing stuff like at the bench where even you're sitting there, it's like, I've never heard that before. And then sometimes there'd be guys that like looked up, and it's just like they just say things that in the back of your head, you're just like, what in the world? Like it was pretty impressive the way they were able to come up with some of the things they were saying. And like, I'm not saying it wasn't terrible and awful, like things to say, but it's just, sometimes you just got to respect it. You know, it's just like, okay, that's
you're saying they got good grades in creative writing.
Oh yeah. I think that has something to do with it.
Yeah. And I mean, those are some of the best chirps where it's like, I'm not even mad. I'm
Yeah.
impressed. And that's the thing too is I think a lot of athletes will say the horrible things people say to you in visiting barns, like that's what you expect to hear. So
Yeah.
it's like it helps your game. But when you hear that at home directed at you, then
It's a little bit different. Yeah.
that's when it hits. But when you hear it on the road, it's like, well done, well done. I
Yeah.
forget where we were playing, where people were saying some stuff, and I would just like turn around and like shake my head, smiling, and they're like, by the end of the game, it's like there was a little bit of a mutual respect. One, because they were being creative, and two, because like they could see like I could take it, and
Yeah.
it wasn't throwing me off my game, but I was amused by what they were doing. It's like there's some of that too.
Oh, I just thought of one of my favorite ones that I ever said out of like pure frustration. There was one game I did not play especially well. Ended up getting pulled in like the second period, whatever. And I go sit on the bench, and like I said, it was not my day. It's just not a good game at all. And then one of their guys comes over the bench, leans over, and I forget what he said. Um, he was obviously chirping me about how many goals I'd just let in that half game, and I was pissed and just instantly rattled off well, everybody else scored and got points, but you didn't get any. So what are you talking to me for? And then you could kind of just see the shock on his face, and he just kind of sat down because I'm like, there's probably 20 points up for grabs, and you still don't have one. So like,
Yeah, there was a game recently where a kid was just he was playing a good 2, 3 divisions down than he should have. He was a ringer, but he was one of those ringers that didn't hold. He wasn't holding back. Like he was
oh
going
yeah,
full out, and like he said something to me, and I just looked at him. I was like, "Hey, the live barn scouts aren't watching an 11 o'clock game from Georgia.
yeah,
Like, take it easy, fella.
yep,
Like, we all have to work in the morning." Um, and the ref found some humor in that one. Started laughing. So the next question, because you're still playing in college, I'll amend it a little bit and say, what's the worst post game beverage?
um, I don't know, really, and like it's tough to say a worst. Like just anything cold after a game is 9 times out of 10 good,
Yep.
but
That's when I ask the question of what's the worst post game beer, that the usual answer is warm beer.
yeah,
um,
yeah,
so when you tape your stick, do you go heel to toe or toe to heel?
I go heel so
Okay, you're a normal goalie.
yeah,
I've had two different guests, and they hadn't heard each other's episodes. Refer to goalies that go toe to heel as psychopaths. I won't go that far. There's a few that I've talked to that had reasons, like Connor Beaupre, the e-bug from Minnesota. He likes to play the puck a lot. He feels like the puck just comes off the tape better when he
mm,
goes toe to heel. But yeah, I think most goalies. But one of these days, I'm going to have to go back and because I'm an analyst, do the tally of how many say toe to heel versus heel to toe,
yeah,
and have the pie chart breakdown
yeah.
to show how few actually go toe to heel. Um,
I have been wanting to try Toad Heel though, just to because I've heard that from a few guys that are like me and enjoy playing the puck more, is they say there's a difference. I personally doubt that you feel a difference, but I'm I'm curious. I feel like I have to try it.
yeah, I don't know. In fact, I just hit my stick yesterday. The reason I've always gone heel to toe is if you if you're like me and you kind of go up that heel, if you're going to mess up your tape job, it's right there at the heel.
Yeah,
So I rather mess up the tape job at the beginning than at the end and
yeah,
waste all that tape.
that's fair.
That's the main reason I've done it that way.
Yeah,
Um, but everybody's different, and there's no wrong way. I just like to see how many true weirdos there are out there. I mean, what's your favorite number to wear and why?
um, it 35 is kind of been my most used number. But I'd say my favorite number's got to be 40. I got it my freshman year at Trine, and that's it. That's the only time I've ever gotten to
Yep.
wear it. I honestly have no explanation as to why, other than I I've grown up a big fan of Cal Peterson when he
Okay.
was at Notre Dame and played for Team USA and had his stint in LA. Now he's in Philly. I actually have his gloves from Notre Dame.
Oh,
I wore
nice.
them for a little bit. Um, yeah, I chat with him over Instagram here and there. And he's a great guy. So,
Hmm.
but
That's a good
that's the only
reason.
explanation. Yeah,
Yeah, it's funny how sometimes those numbers we don't get to wear are still our favorite numbers when we
yeah.
get the chance. So the last question, and probably my favorite, is what advice do you have for young goaltenders?
Um, don't expect results to happen quickly. I'd say that was a big thing for me to learn was just to jump into it and see like super quick results, super quick success, and that's just not how goaltending works. You gotta play around with it. You gotta see what works for you because there's there's really no right way to do it. It's just what works for you is the right way to do it.
Yep.
And
No, that's well said. Is there's no right way except for what's right for you,
yeah,
and it it's very abstract, but it makes so much sense.
yeah,
Um, that's awesome. Well, Scott, I appreciate you getting up early on a Saturday on your winter break to talk to me, so I can get to my
it's not a problem.
midday beer league game. I love the 12:40 face off for us out here. It's very very rare the fact that we have one this early. Everybody's like, wait a minute, that says we're playing in the afternoon.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
they're like, yeah. So thank you. Where can folks find you on social media if they want to?
I'm on Instagram, and my Instagram is S_Kennedy 35, and then Facebook and LinkedIn, just Scott Kennedy.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Well, again, thank you for your time. We'll keep in touch, and good luck in the next endeavor up north.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Good luck to you in your game today.
We're gonna need it. We had a rough. We're 7-1-1, but our last game we played a team that they had an axe to grind. We played them in our first game of the season. They had 4 goals disallowed, and rightfully so. One was kicked in. Another one, their guy was laying on top of me when the puck was shot, so it was goaltender interference. Another
Yeah.
one was blown dead because one of our players fell down and hit their head. So but it was
Oh,
like
yeah.
they were all good reasons to be called no goal.
Yeah.
But to have 4 of them in one game was
Yeah.
just crazy. So they had an axe grind, and they came out and they put 60 shots on net, and they just,
Oh, wow.
I still
Okay.
stopped 51 of them, but it was one of those games, and so we're trying to bounce back from that one. So
Yeah,
we'll see how it
absolutely.
goes today. Um, but yeah, it is what it is. So yeah, like I said, we'll keep in touch and have a good New Year.
You as well.